Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Today I want to talk to you paper crafters about alcohol ink and how I created this beautiful layout with lots of color and texture. And while I did this on a 12 by 12 scrapbook page, you can do this technique in any of your paper crafting creations. Now, if you've seen other tutorials on alcohol ink, you may have heard of Yupo paper. Yupo paper is a specialty non-porous surface designed for alcohol inks, but it can be expensive, it can be hard to find, and finding a 12 by 12 size if you're a scrapbooker is especially difficult. So let me tell you how I use alcohol ink in my craft room without Yupo paper. Now this video isn't a magic solution because you will still need this product, but this product is way more affordable, readily available at almost any craft store, and it has a lot more uses in your craft room. So we will dive into how I use this product as an alternative to Yupo paper. I will show you tips and tricks, as well as the process of using alcohol inks. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I have a small bonus technique for you. So let's dive in. All right, here I am with my surface prepared. I have a nice thick piece of cardstock here, and I have gesso. Now, gesso is used to prep canvases for painters, but we're going to use it in the same way to prep our cardstock, which means it's going to fill in the pores of the cardstock so that your paper won't just absorb that alcohol ink right away. What we're trying to do here is create a surface for those inks to float across. And that is what Yupo paper is especially designed for. It's not exactly paper, it's kind of a plasticky material that allows the ink to float. So we're going to replicate that with gesso. Now, this does take a little bit of time and it is a little bit messy. And I would recommend if you're going to prep some cardstock, you might as well do this in a batch, like do 5 sheets or 6 sheets or however many sheets you're going to use. And that way you only have to clean up once and then you have paper on hand for future projects. I am using a special silicone brush here, but you can use any brush. Just know that you'll have to be gentle to kind of remove any brush strokes out of this, and that is true with this brush as well. As you'll see here in a moment, I'm going to tip the brush down at a very low angle and then finish off this with smooth strokes in one straight direction so that I eliminate as many brush strokes as possible. And it won't be perfect, but I'm okay with that. And speaking of imperfect, gesso is not a perfect mimic for Yupo paper, but we'll get to that a little bit more as we start working with the alcohol. In the meantime, I'm going to flatten out this piece now that it's completely dry. I let this dry for a couple of hours, but overnight really would be best. And then the other supplies you're going to need for working with alcohol is rubbing alcohol. There are specialty blending solutions, but you really don't have to have those. They work a little bit differently, but rubbing alcohol will do if you're just beginning. I have my alcohol inks here. I have a dozen colors, but you can just work with 3 primary colors and get a whole rainbow, and we'll talk more about that later. Now, this blower tool is one thing I do recommend because while you can use a straw to blow around your alcohol inks, you want to be careful not to suck up that ink because it could be toxic, and you could get lightheaded if you're blowing a lot, which you'll see is involved with this project. So that tool is definitely a recommended one, and I will link you up below. It's not terribly expensive, but it definitely is a special tool. I have this little swatch of cardstock that I have put my inks on, and you can see this is untreated cardstock. So that ink just soaked right into the paper and created blobs. And that is why we're coating our paper with gesso so that we don't get this blobby look. We want that ink to float and blend and mix. And that is what the alcohol is going to help us do. I'm going to pour some alcohol into my paint palette. Has a few little wells in it, and I'm going to use an eyedropper. You can just kind of splash this across your project. I like a little bit more control with my eyedropper, so that is why I'm doing it this way. I am going to start off with just one particular set of colors in the center of my project so that I can surround this middle band with other colors on the edges. And so you can see I'm just putting a few drips of 2 different bluey teal colors, and then I'm just going to start blowing this. And as you can see, I didn't put quite enough alcohol down, so they're not moving as much. But once I added extra drips here, you can see how much better this will move around for you. Now, this drip right here got a little bit too dry, and so it's not moving as much. So this is where the gesso isn't quite as perfect as Yupo paper, but I am willing to sacrifice a little bit of that quality in order for the affordability. So that is good for me, and I just want to help you decide if this could work for you. All right, I am mixing and blending two different colors, like I said here, so that I can get a lovely flow and swirl of this. While you can control alcohol ink a little bit, a lot of this process really is up to randomness. I will say that if you blow straight down onto a drip of ink, you will get more of a splat like look to it. And if you blow low into the side of the ink, you will get more of streaks or even like long splattered looks. So it just depends on what you want to do. I recommend just have a piece of paper to play with and try it and experiment. And as I move on to the next color in this project, I'm going to speed this up a little bit because you have the general idea now. And I am going to work in a much bigger area. I'm adding more alcohol to get this started. Alcohol does evaporate and dry, and that's part of why I like the 90% alcohol better because you have a little bit more alcohol in the solution, so that gives you just a little bit more working time with this. But you can add more alcohol on top of your colors, and it will start to lift it and help you continue to blend and work with it, even if it has started to dry. And Yupo is really, really good at that. So that is a slight disadvantage to this gesso cardstock method. All right, you can see that I am going right up close to that edge of that previous color, but I am trying not to overlap. And that is because wherever colors touch each other, they are going to blend. So if you know any of your color theory, if you have red and blue touching, you're going to end up with purple. And that's basically what I have here. I have pinks, which is a light red, and I have blues, and they are going to start touching some in this project. And where they do that, I'm going to end up with purple. So that is why I said earlier that if you just start with the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, you can get a lot of range of colors. And there, the purple just showed up on that top right corner. I will correct that just a little bit later. But like I said, if you want to play with alcohol inks, start small, get the blower, get three colors, and get yourself some gesso and heavy cardstock, and you can get to playing with this. And I'm making a huge piece here, but again, you can do any size, and this piece can be cut down to any size that you want. Here's where I'm trying to correct that purple again. So I am adding some just plain rubbing alcohol on top of that and blotting it up with my cloth. And you can see it lifted some of that purple. And then I'm going to include more of the color that I do want over the top of that to help blend it in and kind of cover up the spot that looks a little splotchy from the blotting process. So I'm much happier with that color, and I'm going to continue working on this piece. I'm going to add more color on top of this previously existing color, and I think this actually works a little better on the gesso paper than it does on Yupo, because like I said, the Yupo is more forgiving in releasing that ink so that it will flow when you add more alcohol on top of it. And alcohol is in the color, so if you put more color on top of an already dry color, it will reactivate that and start blending and bleeding. So the gesso paper actually is better for being able to layer up your colors a little bit more. Now, in between the zones, between these two colors, I'm going to add some gold. This particular is gold mixative from the Tim Holtz and Ranger line of alcohol inks. There are other ones out there that have metallic sheens or pearl sheens to them. I am doing this because there is a little bit of a harsh line in between those two zones as I was trying not to create purple. And so when I'm using this ink on top of that, it helps blend that zone without the blue and pink reactivating too much to create too much more purple. Now, these metallic inks are heavier, like literally thicker and heavier than the other alcohol inks, so they are a little harder to move around, and they do require a little bit more alcohol to help them move. So just know that about the different kinds of inks. I think I am finishing up this zone over here where I'm trying to correct a little bit more purple. And purple is not bad at all, in my opinion, but I was really going for a very specific color palette here because of an inspiration that I had seen. All right, I have shown you 1.5 coats pretty much, and I am coming in and doing a full second coat. I don't feel like I need to walk you through the entirety of this because I've already said a lot about layering colors. But if you have any questions on that, please drop me a note because I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I am not an expert at alcohol inks, but I love to play, and so I can share what I do know with you. All right, let's talk about that bonus technique because as alcohol ink dries, it becomes slightly tacky. And this is a very time sensitive technique, and that's why it's a bonus technique and not the focus of this video because this can take some trial and error to learn. But as you saw me tip the paper into the light, you can see some shiny spots, and that's where the ink has not dried all the way, and it will be a little bit tacky. I don't know, chemically speaking, why this is about alcohol ink, but that slightly tacky quality can grab onto foiling. Now, this is not the hot foiling that you use with a hot foil machine. This is the kind that you can use with toner machines or adhesives, and Decofoil is a great brand for getting those. I will put some links down below if you are interested in foiling. I do have a whole technique video on foiling, so I will post that up in the corner as well as in the show notes so you can check that out if you want to know more about foiling, because it's always good to have plenty of techniques to use with the tools, equipment, and supplies that we bring into our craft space. All right, I am continuing to kind of burnish this foil down. And as you can see, this was an already previously used piece of foil. And that's why this technique is really fun for using up stuff that you might consider throwing away. But there's enough good foil on that sheet left that we can add this to some projects. Now, the spots of alcohol ink, the drier they get, the less they're going to stick. So you will end up with small spots and portions of this with foiling on it. And as I tip it into the light more, you can see where that is showing up and where it's not. So this is trial and error, and you're just going to have to go with the flow on it. But once it is done, it is so pretty in real life. I can't even explain that the camera is not doing this justice. But if you can see some of that shine happening, like multiply it by 10 in person because it is pretty. The hardest part about this is when I went to use this piece of paper on the scrapbook layout, I had to cover up some of that gold foil, and that was almost painful to do. At any rate, speaking of that scrapbook layout, I will just quickly show you what I did with this layout. I'm not going to walk you through everything. I did keep it super simple, just so all of those features of the alcohol ink and the gold foiling could be the star of the show. So I've got my photos, a couple of simple die cuts, punches, a really easy title, and a little bit of stitching around the edges. And hopefully you can see that gold foiling show up. That wraps up this video. I will leave you here with some close-ups of this project, so hopefully you can catch a better view of that foiling and just all the swirls of color that alcohol ink provides. It is a fantastic medium, and I hope I have inspired you to give this technique a try and not be intimidated by it. I should be back soon with some more videos for you. Until then, have an artful day.